Welcome to the Tuesday, September 9th, 2025 meeting of the Carmel Clay Board of Parks and Recreation at the John Hensel Government Center. The meeting is starting at 6:05. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, excuse me, I did that backwards. We need the roll first. I'm sorry, Katie, go ahead.
Jonathan Blake,
Present.
Jim Garrettson, absent. Judy Hagan,
Here.
Jen Kristunas, absent. Katie Mueller's here. Josh Orahood,
Present.
John Shapiro, absent. Reedy Shukla,
Present.
and Mark Westmeyer.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda tonight is public comments. Do we have public comment? No public comments? All right. Then we will move along to the main event, which is our favorite architect, Greg Calpino, will give us a report on the Bear Creek schematic design, the latest update. Thank you.
Magic. I'll also be sharing the mic. We've got Ivo Rosendahl and Jay Blue. I think remember Jay from the master plan. Ivo, I'm not sure if you've been in this room or not. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it's on. Do you hear? Yeah. No one's ever told me to speak up, so I have the gift of a voice that really needs a microphone. So I will be sharing the presentation here between Jay and Ivo and I here tonight. But it is great to be back. We were actually out in the park this afternoon and captured some wildlife out there as well too. So it's not going to update the plan at all yet, but it's always fun to. I think as you've known working with us long enough that it's an iterative process. It's a very field intensive process, especially a park like Bear Creek that you're working with so much to start with. Not that all your parks don't have that, but I think we've always felt from the master plan that this was really about doing less is really a lot more in terms of impact out there with the prairies and such too. So I think we keep feeling that way, and every time we go out there, I think we feel there's one less thing we're going to do, and I think it's really valuable every time. So we appreciate sort of the temporary trails that you put out there and giving us the chance to sort of learn every time we're in town too. So hopefully you'll see that it was represented in the plan here tonight. So kind of right on cue, this has been a fun one because of really back to the master plan in 22. First thing we did after COVID or during, I forget it was during and after, relearning how to come together. I think we intentionally took a very, I think it was slow cooked was our term, Jay, right? Of trying to take our time, again, get out there, get with kids. And, we really haven't stopped that process. So as we've kind of gotten into schematic and bringing the master plan forward, we've sort of kept doing that. We brought some new partners into the team here with Ivo as well. And we've had a lot of fun too. Hopefully Michael and your team has felt the same way. We brought some game pieces last time and built the park out of little model pieces. And so, again, every time this thing has advanced, it's gotten better. And you'll see the fruits of that. So where we're at right now in the process, again, we've been going as fast as we can here, and hopefully we will be wrapped up in November with design development, and I know there's some additional process that will happen after that in terms of the building side of things. But really, about this time last year, we were just kicking things off. I think that's where we got out with the kids again during October. It's kind of validated what we're going to do in this first phase. The project has ebbed and flowed a little bit in terms of some of the available funding, and we've been fortunate enough that we're able to do a lot in this phase one, a really good chunk of the north side of the park as well as all the connections to the south from a trail perspective. So that validation implementation plan process was really valuable. Pictures of Michael playing with game pieces was back in April earlier this year. We just did wrap up the schematic design report, which I believe everyone has a draft copy of as well. And we are really kicking off the design development process with that wrap up and any feedback that we get from the staff. So onward. Well, this should look familiar to anybody who is part of the process. So we have stuck to sort of these principles and this vision. These aren't just things you do in a master plan. This idea of trying to find a balance between the activated, the resilient, the connected. Again, not losing sight that this is a community park set in some really kind of unique urban nature as well too. So we're still kind of balancing these of the bigger Bear, which is really kind of embracing Bear Creek and the ecology. Jay will talk about a bit of that tonight of where we've taken beyond the creek, a lot of interesting thoughts with the oaks and everything else as well too. Thinking about how to engage the bear with bear sightings. Evo's going to talk a little more about some of those, some of the facilities that we're starting to really sort of knit into the rooms out here. And again, trying to find that right balance with, you know, escaping, but also feeling that you're in a community park, in a growing part of Carmel as well too. So we took those principles from the master plan and we've sort of layered them on these on top in schematic. If you recall from the master plan, if you've been out there, there's a really fascinating grid of oaks that somebody planted, I don't know, 20 years ago, 10 foot on center roughly, and they're all a fairly even age stand between 4 to 8 inches tall, and you kind of only notice it initially in an aerial photograph when you go out there. So we've really been thinking a lot about, you know, what do we do with that sort of unnatural, natural pattern? How do we honor it? How do we start to chip away at it, you know, to program some of these things into the park? Also, figuring out where we may want to deviate too. So this idea of, again, that grid with this sort of idea of dynamic, you know, more powerful edges, which you'll start to see in the design. One of the things that's in this phase that was in the master plan is the North Tower. You will hear from Evo that we have evolved what the thinking is of a tower. And actually, we were out there again this afternoon looking across the creek up at the Oaks, and we're really happy that it's not a 100-foot tall tower hovering above the park. I think we're really feeling good about how this thing is knitting in there. But the reason this principle is called Destination Tower, and actually it was Evo that brought this up, was we've both been to one of the models that we had, which was a Peninsula State Park in Door County, Wisconsin. That park is visited by 2 to 3 million people a year. So you go back to that tower, whether you like it or not, you're going to visit as a tourist. We didn't want this to be a, you know, we don't know that you're going to have that many people visiting Bear Creek Park, at least not in the first year. You know, we wanted to make sure it wasn't a one and done, that you just go to the tower, visit it. So what is it going to do that's going to provide 2 and 3 other uses, reasons to come back? So making sure it was not just an object, it was a destination too. The other thing was just connections. Again, you know, loop trails, trying to make sure, and again, you got a good start with some of the Moan trails. What do we do to start to add to those? And knowing that we're not going to be building all of the roads and parking, the importance of these sort of trail connections from the south, from the north, from the east and the west, thinking about that sort of neighborhood connection system was super important as a driver. As we started getting into putting sort of pen to paper and taking the master plan further, we started thinking about what are some patterns that could drive, you know, things like trails and structures and layouts of some of these spaces. And we looked, you know, not surprisingly, we looked at nature. We looked at wind and water, and we really started to kind of hone in on a couple of themes of sort of nests, just broadly put, whether that's a bird's nest, whether it's a wasp nest, but things that were sort of naturally formed, and sort of that pattern, that dendritic pattern of nests was one that became kind of an interesting driver. And the other one was really thinking about migration and migratory patterns. Some of this was, again, interesting creative tension in our team of everything is gridded on this park. So what's going to be the driver for something sort of curvy, swervy? You know, what, is there something more than just wanting to draw curves out there? And so this idea of the sort of migratory patterns, you know, bats and birds and things like that, you kind of see up here where things, and also that they weren't just from above, they actually, things that kind of went up and down was also important. So that got us to sort of the midpoint. I think that was the workshop in April, that we actually took the master plan and we kind of advanced 2 different concepts just for input from Michael and his team. And one was called the Nest and one was called Migration, go figure. And they both kind of all did the same things, right? They had the basic program of shelters and play and courts and parking. So we tried to make sure the program was apples to apples, but talked differently about, and the tower was probably the thing that was the most emphasized in that pattern of, like, and I would say the most different probably between the 2 schemes too. And just after, I think there were a lot of benefits from both, but I think we kind of unanimously ended up on the migration as the way to go forward. So this is the master plan we were tracking down in the car here a little bit ago. So this is the overall master plan of Bear Creek Park at a schematic point. So it should look fairly familiar if you know the master plan, but there's a lot of subtleties here. You know, the master plan talked about oak rooms. Well, we've been confirming where those Oak rooms are. How big are they? Where are they? We've been kind of moving the pieces around, to find the right fit, where shelters go, next to courts, things like that. Where should play go? Knowing that this is a really important first playground, but we also know that, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years, funding, there's going to be a really cool, affectionately referred to as chutes and ladders south of the creek, right? So this wants to be sort of that first really cool thing, but there's going to be something maybe bigger on the line somewhere too. So trying to find the right balance here, not just from a budget standpoint, but also just from the experiential. Again, just kind of, and we'll go through this in more detail in a second, but just big picture, a lot more development and activities sort of up to the north, which was always the intent. It's a little louder up there, sort of the front door off of Voyager. It will be more passive and quieter to the south, and in this plan, there's a bit of that as well too, where we're really south of the creek. Once we restore the creek, it's really going to be about some of those mown trails, and then this sort of multi-use trail that will connect, from Shelbourne. So, speaking of trails, so this is just kind of high level of what that circulation system looks like. So you see kind of the major trail that connects through, and it'll connect into the other trail system that's being planned and built, depending on where you're at along Shelbourne. So that becomes sort of the main entrance from the south. And from the north, we're going to build the first phase of the parking lot. That's roughly in the same spot as the master plan. 30 cars now. Down the line, there might be another 50 or 60 cars once the community, the program pavilion kind of comes on board. And then the rest is really kind of a series of the dash lines or mown trails, which some of those are in place today, maybe a few more. I think our thought on those is over time, if you want to put one through the prairie for a few years, you do that. You want to move it, you move it over here, right? I think that's a really great tool, and it's been working so great since we started the master plan that we didn't, so these are, I would say, suggestive right now. And the rest are really sort of local connectors, sidewalks, things like that connect you to the play, the shelters, things like that. The most exciting slide, we've been talking about this one in our shop, we have been looking at utilities. We are in schematics. So again, we have been pricing this, and we've been thinking about not just what's needed for the plan today, again, which is really, there's not a really big utility need today. We have a toilet building, which is the biggest driver for sanitary. But we are also starting to plan ahead that eventually you're going to have a program facility out here with toilets and shelters and things like that too. So we're starting to at least be mindful of what you need today, what you need on the line, and put those corridors in place with this plan. So this is we'll kind of take you on a little tour north to south. And starting in the north, this is a view if you were hovering kind of above Shelbourne and Voyager, looking towards chutes and ladders towards the creek, looking kind of southwest. This gives you a sense of how everything kind of knits together, sort of prairie in the distance, play, and some of the facilities kind of in the foreground, and development kind of happening along Voyager. But before we get into all of that, I wanted Jay to kind of talk about how this really starts at an ecological level. So, Jay.
Well, thanks for having us back. It's exciting to be back here and to continue to talk about Bear Creek. It's been a really exciting project. So as Greg alluded to, we have this interesting condition at the site where we've got this grid of trees that somebody planted 15, 18, 20 years ago. They're about 10 feet on center. Some of them about 8 feet on center. I think they were planted off the back of a tractor. And the grid of oaks plus the other restored prairie areas and Bear Creek and its natural habitats became a big driver force for the project itself. I mean, it was part of the reason we talked about slowing this project down was to take advantage of the natural assets on site. We have the benefit of not having a greenfield. This is a great, wonderful space. And one of the reasons we said, let's slow down, let's put mown trails out there, let's get what we called the barn open, and let the community start to use this space and experience this space. And if folks recall when we had some of those very early public meetings at the master plan, there were folks in there talking about going out there and seeing owls and different other types of primarily aviary wildlife. And so we wanted to make sure we're preserving that to the greatest extent possible, but maximizing that asset. So the prairie areas are staying, the restored prairie areas are staying, they might even grow a little bit. And then we've been trying to figure out how to wrestle with this oak grid. We don't want it to go away. We want to be really thoughtful about how we maximize the benefit of that asset. There are some just FYI, there's oaks on the grid, but there's also some oaks that have died, and there's some volunteer species that we probably don't really want out there. There's some invasive pear that we don't really want that probably need to come out anyway. So what Smith Group did is, initially we were trying to figure out, that we presumed that there would be some sort of removal process, but in the process of trying to resolve that, we identified that spading these trees now is really not any different than buying brand new trees. It's less expensive than buying brand new trees. So for us to to develop a spading operation, to come in there with a spade operator and pull out some of the trees that need to move, enables us to do a couple things with those trees. We can redistribute some of those oaks around the rest of the site, because you've got a predominance of these oaks up at the north end. There's a lot more walnut and ash, especially along Bear Creek, and as we get south to where the old residence used to be, there's not very many oaks at all. There's some hackberry, so some of it's good native, some of it's not. But we can move some of those oaks from the north end that would be otherwise impacted by our project to the south end. So there's a moving operation to be able to relocate some of those trees on site. There's a moving operation to relocate some of those trees potentially to other parks. So let's take it, if we know we're gonna have to move the trees anyway for some of the development, we're already starting to think about, is there a need for a good 15 to 20 foot tall, 6-inch diameter oak at West Park? So trying to think now about where some of these trees might go to other facilities where we can benefit the portfolio of parks already. And then after talking with the spader, we realized that some of these trees can actually be moved and temporarily stored on site, and we can move them right back to their old location if done right. So if we're working with the right spade operator, they can come in, they can spade the trees, they'll move them to a temporary location, a nursery facility, probably on the south side of the park, and we can keep those trees with the drip irrigation system healthy and alive, and then move them back, as long as we're not talking about 8 years down the line. If it's in about a 2-year range, we can move them and move them back and be really able to reestablish those trees in a responsible way. And that allows us to maximize the benefit of having 18 to 20 foot trees, and hundreds of 18 to 20 foot trees on this site. So the next step we did was to take a look at, what do oaks really want to grow at? What's the spacing that oaks really want to grow at? A 10 foot on center spacing is really too tight for oaks. Occasionally you'll see oaks growing that way in nature, but it's pretty unusual that you'll see oaks in a 6 to 8 foot spacing. So over the course of the last couple months, while we've been out and about and doing other things, we've been trying to evaluate how oaks are naturally growing. And generally what we're finding is they prefer about a 45 to 65 foot spacing. And so what we've tried to do is try to look at, in our highest use zones, prioritizing those spaces to move our oaks out, relocate them elsewhere on site, relocate them on this site, on other sites, or move them and then move them back, but trying to achieve a closer to somewhere between a 45 and a 65 foot spacing. So we're opening the rooms up so we get the maximum benefit of those oaks. Long term, we want these oaks up big and high and glorious and beautiful, right? Then we're going to leave the grid tight in other locations with the anticipation that CCPR is going to be operating a forestry plan out there for the long-term health of some of the more heavily wooded areas, but where we're not expecting to do heavy machinery improvements. We anticipate leaving those oaks for as long as we can get the benefit of the density there and maximizing the benefit of that density. That may mean that occasionally Michael's team needs to go out there and they drop an oak or two, right? They chainsaw down an oak or two, and they might need to do that for the benefit of the oaks around it. But long term, that's an easy solution, and we're still gaining the benefit of the oaks. So that's part of the oak story. You want me to keep going, or you want to jump on to this? And the way we dealt with the oaks was to really think about the site, the north site, in two ways. There's a passive arm here and an active arm. So that migration architecture that we developed really allowed us to split the site into two different zones. And you'll see when Evo presents it, the structure itself actually creates a bit of a curtain to allow you to have a very active zone, kids and families picnicking and playing and running around and doing their funnest activities, and then a moment where you make a bend, and all of a sudden you're back into the densest part of the forest, the quietest part of the forest, or maximizing the benefit of keeping those oaks tight. This happens to be where our oaks are going to stay the tightest, and you're back into a passive space, a reflective space, a discovery space, where we're really bringing your focus back into nature. And as Greg alluded to, it's not just that it's doing this motion at a two-dimensional scale, it's doing this motion and coming up and coming back down. So we're really trying, and Evo's gonna present that in a moment, but we're really trying to maximize the benefit of that structure serving as a mechanism to really marry the two experiences of the site together. So I think we're gonna end up shifting to you guys, and I'll come back up for Creek.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, this kind of, when you kind of put all that together, this is sort of a zoom in of the north part of the, really, we kind of call it the north extents. And so, again, kind of working from west to east, again, you know, pretty open, kind of starting to put the, you know, the pieces in place for where parking and drop off will happen in this first phase. Really kind of laying the groundwork for some things down the line, but then really kind of starting this real core of activity that Jay talked about. A little more open landscape where we can start to get some lawn under there. Where it's appropriate, there might be play surface where there's playgrounds, but that 40 to 60 kind of open, classic sort of oak savanna kind of feel to it. Start to knit some shelter, some walks in those areas, so these start to become little active rooms. But you see that number 6, that's actually would be one of the rentable shelter. So the idea that actually this becomes one of those places where if you want to, we've seen it at West Park and others that you've done, where you've got that synergy between play and shelter. So really starting to think about that sort of, that lawn area where you see the 6 and the 14 and 13s and the 10s and those areas as being really the sort of that active, if there's really not active recreation out here, the courts, we'll have a bit of that with pickleball and basketball and other things happening there, but it's really kind of centered around that family experience towards the playground there. And then the big figure 8 you see there is really what that migration concept became. And so that becomes this sort of aerial sort of tree walk. It becomes, you know, we thought it's really, it started off as if this tower is you know, roughly 20 feet above the ground. We want to make sure you can get there accessibly. So you could just do a ramp system, which is kind of a boring thing, or we can make it into a journey or a migration. So that's kind of what the central feature of that really is there. And the way we start to do that is, you know, again, going back to what Jay talked about with the trees, one, we're looking for where some of the openings and maybe where the evasives are that we know of, and we're trying to target, those might be places that we do more of the grading so that this thing, again, we're trying to balance cost and impact good and impact cost and bad impacts, right? And so a lot of this is really on berms. If you think about what we did at West Park at the playground, where you sort of climb up on that berm, really the same general idea as you sort of climb up here, different playground, but the idea of actually climbing on a berm up there, minimizing how much of this is really just on structure. But then where we have structures, we're actually going to use it for multiple things. And then the same thing kind of coming down. And then we have also similar low areas that we're getting ahead of where stormwater is going to go, things like that too. So this first phase is starting to really drive that. And then we might be taking those oaks and putting them right back on those mounds where it makes sense as well too. And so here's a little cross section of what that starts to look like. We kind of call it berm hopping, that you sort of have this sort of play berm that you climb up, and then for a little bit you sort of bridge across it, and then we're actually taking a knoll that's already on the site and adding 8 to 10 feet to that. So this idea that you actually kind of hop across to that, which becomes kind of your launch point for what we're calling, yeah. So we kind of call that the tower experience. And at that point, I'll let Evo take over.
Second, that it's exciting to be here to talk about the project at this stage. I think I'll walk now through a bit of the building experience, the overall site experience as it relates to sort of transitioning through the building, and maybe some more of the specific program elements. I think one thing that I love about this arrangement is sort of the physical form. So just in case it's not obvious, it starts to better break down how you transition onto the elevated experience. So starts here at grade, from here up 13 feet, creating sort of this land bank route to the play area. What we love about that is sort of the active loud other speaking. It starts to shelter that floor noise. Brings it much quieter as it passes along. Ramp up to what we call the parent curve. So these are these rooms starting to move upward into the canopy. 13 feet here, continue along the spine, it straightens out for a moment, potentially just sort of align your experience as you come to this opening that's naturally there now. Overall,
Evo, I don't want to interrupt, but
I'm
can you
sorry,
just get close?
microphone.
Yeah, swing it
I will do
around.
that. Yep.
Maybe swing it around.
Could
so-
we get them a handheld mic, David, or
I will maybe work on my, just point
can we
to
get
with
them a
my
handheld?
words.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair. Good point. I'll grab the right device here. So, all right. So you'll come up to this parent perch here, 13 feet up, and then come down the spine to sort of the, is it not showing? That's okay. That's all good. I know, it's all good. So the point at the end is 22 feet above grade. And so this is actually something we studied quite a bit when we first thought about a tower experience, right? We thought, what's right? Is it 20, 30, 40, 60, 100? Does this, okay, I will. All right. So we studied what's the right experience in Bear Creek. And we really came to the realization that once you get too high, you're not experiencing the park. And knowing that as these oaks mature through this sort of wisdom of the ecological sort of spreading them out and letting them become the beauty that they once will be, right now we're creating today's experience, which is in the canopy, but as the oaks mature, you'll start to be sort of midway through that canopy. And so it'll be a really amazing experience to watch this park experience over time as the park matures. But so you'll come up to this 22-foot overlook, and you'll see, as we transition, you'll see some moments of the architectural expression, but really leaning in on this idea that, you know, everyone probably has their own reference, but when you walk through a gridded experience, think of a cornfield or this sort of farmed tree scenario. Every angle you look at sort of creates these glimpses and sort of curiosities. And so the curved walk through really leans into that forced experience through seeing these sort of really linear trees in different perspectives until you get to this forced perspective, which is really a wonderful one over the field. And then back down the ramp to the core. This core is where restrooms are embedded at the base, and then one of your main rentable shelters is beneath, sheltered here as well. What am I forgetting here? I suppose this is the upper section. As you can see, when we get to the architectural expression, you'll see that these moves are sort of interpreted to help play with that canopy and filtered light by providing shade, but also shelter from any rain. So the rest of the program, to be clear, 3 restrooms, all accessible, 2 of them accessible, at the base. Utility and storage minimally there as well. The shelter that Greg spoke to, and what we're calling this bear den, small single picnic table for 5 to 8 users adjacent to the courts there. I'll jump to the next slide. So here you get your first view of the floor plan of the core structure here. And I joke a little bit here. People see different things, but today, after seeing a praying mantis, I want to pretend that this is inspired by a praying mantis. I see some similarities. On site, we saw one. So anyway, first floor plan, joking aside, storage room and the 3 restrooms. And then the structure floats above, as you see here, to create a sheltered, larger shelter here. And then the upper section here, you'll see the upper plan here. The ramp comes up to an upper occupiable area, moment to overlook your kids playing. And then, you know, if needed, you can sort of short circuit the trail back down to restrooms, and really creating this sort of hub at the center of sort of energy and circulation of this part of the site. Here's your first peek, what that experience is. Arriving from the west towards the structure, you can see sort of some screening, some playing off of this sort of repetition and visual play that you get naturally in the landscape with a sort of a graphic element there. There's your larger shelter, restrooms on the left side of the image, and you can see this is one of your portals up, starting the journey back up, and you can of course take either direction. And then this is that raised perch moment above.
The creek is, where the creek would be.
The creek is that way. Yeah.
Behind Evo is the creek. Your neighbor to the southeast, that one big residence would be right here.
Yep.
Voyager Way would be back over here.
Yeah. We're going to move upwards So now you're about 13 feet up. This is pretty indicative of the tree canopy today. So you're in the canopy today. The play area is to the right of the image, and the more quiet, natural areas to the left side. And you can see prairie is straight ahead, and you can sort of, I think the design of this is intentionally, as I mentioned, curved to sort of be contrasting to this grid in the landscape, but also, you know, moments of intentional linear moments to really sort of force your perspective and drive you down towards the end. And here's your perch moment. So again, using, again, a series of linear vertical moments to sort of frame the left view to force your eye to really enjoy the perspective shot over the prairie and over the creek. There's the future chutes and ladders for context. And this is a space that can host 12, 25 people, you know, kids or adults. It's really can scale and be a moment to, for teaching or gathering. It's really quite flexible, but still feels intimate when, you know, more sparsely occupied. We'll integrate a few bench moments, as you see. I think the other nice thing, honestly, that this does is the residents, I don't know if we have a name for the residents yet, but the residents to the left here is nicely obscured. It would be visible without this screening. So it sort of not only screens that home, but also really focuses the purpose of this space back towards the inside prairie. And then this is your view of the perch coming from the South Prairie Trail on the east side. You can see that perch. Maybe we have different moments of experiences. So some transparency, some netting experiences, little moments to offer some transparency and porosity. And you can see the trail coming back through. All right. And just as exciting are the remaining shelters on the site. So a couple precedents you're familiar with. This one here, for sure. And I think this is maybe a bit more standard issue, but we think the architecture will be a simple relating expression to host, you know, 4 or 6 picnic tables below, 12, 24 users. This is a rentable shelter closer to the open central sort of court, and pretty great proximity to both restrooms and the courts. And then this is what we're calling affectionately the bear den, so much smaller. These are more, you know, a single family or a small pot of people would join, 5 to 8 people in these. And these are a module that could expand into the future if needed throughout the park. So another shot from the west looking east, you've got the future program pavilion. Here, you've got your parking lot and arrival lawn. We just talked about the bear den, the courts, that initial small rentable shelter. And you can see here, this is where the central lawn occurs, and you have your ramp that starts to wrap play and creates your first perch to the praying mantis inspired canopy experience. No, I shouldn't play that too strongly. Over to the overlook, and then you're looped back down. So really excited about sort of the energy and momentum that this migration model really will send through the park. And I don't know, as a parent, I love the idea of my kids just being able to circle through the space, and I can be in one moment and know they'll always kind of return back, ideally. So, Greg, do you want to jump in here? I don't know if you...
Well, I just love how this has evolved into a guitar, and now it's into a praying mantis from one site visit today. So you kind of see the proof of things. But no, I think, again, this is kind of a good overview that kind of give you a sense of just, I think the other thing we're starting to think about here a little bit as we kind of move forward is, you know, I think the idea of sort of kids racing and all that as well, but we're also starting to think about, are there some distances? I mean, as we dial this in a little bit further, what are some of the distances? Does 10 laps give you a mile, or things like that as well? So does it become a fitness piece of it, as a parent piece of it? Again, more than just a one-off experience like that you come back for, right? Based on a lot of discussions with Michael's team, we've also been thinking about just, again, proximities here. So distances to toilets from parking, shelters to toilets, things like that as well too. So at this point, I think everything is sort of meeting a lot of the standards that we're seeing in other parks that we worked on or that you've done as well. But a great tight little core here, but also enough space to, it's not too tight as well too. So we've been kind of working on that. But again, as a parent, as a range of users, I think it's got a good sort of all-day experience, which is one of the goals, I think, in the master plan. So hopping south, and we're kind of coming into the home stretch here. So yeah, there's a lot going on in the north, but quietly, again, what Jay described ecologically, again, it's really, again, a do less harm kind of experience here too. So I think our focus for this has really been, and Jay will talk about the creek itself here in a second, but this gives you a sense of what this trail experience will look like coming in from the south. We're starting to think about, we know down the line that this entrance drive will do something like this down the line in a few years when that phase gets done. So we're intentionally pulling this trail off of that line, also knowing that we're going to leave this in place for a while. We fully anticipate that the gravel lot over here, that facility, whether it's for ad hoc programming, whether it's for maintenance, it's still a valuable resource out there. So from day one, we want to get this trail in the right place. So first thing we've done, actually, we're recommending that we change the crossing, the current crossing, and to have it actually kind of a line here where you're able to cross Shelbourne and get into that greenway system. And then we're really starting to follow where we can, start to use where some of the sanitary utility lines have gone in, start to use those openings for the trail corridor, and really start to sort of hug the creek corridor, kind of get down low and work your way down to the creek, and then have connections back up to what we call the barn, again, in this case. But again, thinking about this thing that, eventually there'll be other programs and such over here too, but really start to get a little bit of a glimpse of the creek as you're coming into the park here too. So there will be some restoration happening up here, really more vegetative management, more so than some of the things on the creek that we'll talk about. And we will have a little bridge crossing. I think after a lot of discussion, one of the future phases is going to be a pretty robust boardwalk system. So our thought here, instead of having a sort of a soaring architectural experience or something like that, was let's treat this as the first section of boardwalk. And then down the line, you'll start to add more of them too. So we looked at a couple options, and we really actually like a version of what we did up at West Park here as a product. I think that idea of a precast concrete boardwalk, it's low enough that it doesn't need a big handrail. So it'll be just a very casual, low sort of creek crossing boardwalk that, again, we've got some proven experience doing that with you. And here's a little rendering of what that can start to look like. So imagine you've kind of come around the corner, you're coming down to the creek. Here's kids are creek stomping and starting. The future Jay Blues here are your future ecologists are in the creek. There's the tower that Evo just talked about off in the distance across the prairie. And then the multi-use path will kind of wind its way around across the prairie and back up to that core area as well too. So, and then down the line, you'll start to see the other boardwalk pieces will start to knit in over in this area too as future phases come along too. So really feel like you've got a true north experience and a very different south experience, both equally dramatic. And as a bike, as a pedestrian, this is going to be a really strong moment for coming into the park. But going back to the bigger bear, let's talk about what we're doing to the creek.
So again, picking up on our theme of less is more, if folks recall at the master plan, we looked at some pretty broad sweeping stream restoration ideas, and including remeandering Bear Creek up, moving it way north and then pulling it back south. And what we kind of learned is there's probably a few places where we need to do some concentrated restoration. We may need to move the creek in a few places in a future phase, especially when we do the chutes and ladders and the boardwalks. There's a few spots where the creek approaches the toe of the bluff. And I didn't mean for it to sound like that. It's not. We call it the Indiana Bluff, but it's not that tall. So it's in the 15 or 18 foot range. It's not sandstone, but it will be an erosive issue for the toe of that bluff in time. So there are a few places as you go west where I think we're going to have to look at doing a little bit of moving of that creek just to take the pressure, the hydraulic pressure off that toe of the bluff. But in this part of the site, especially at the east side, it's really about, there we go. It's really about being more thoughtful about making the creek more visible. So, can you hear me okay? Okay, good. So In this instance, we're more interested in thoughtfully marking some of those existing trees and then removing a lot of the understory and underbrush that's obscuring your visibility to the creek, and being very thoughtful about vegetative management and restoring more of a meadow environment closer to that creek. So there, again, as Greg and Ivo alluded to, we were on site today. There are some really nice, elegant walnuts that we just need to tag and say, don't remove that tree. We don't want to do a clear cut along the creek. But then there are some walnuts that are snags. You know, they're dead for all practical purposes. There's some ash out there. There's some pear in there. There's a whole bunch of honeysuckle. There's a lot of clearing we can do to make the creek itself more visible to your community while preserving some of these really great, beautiful walnuts that will become the anchor for the chutes and ladders in a future phase, and allowing us to come in here with a vegetative management strategy that will open that creek up, really extend the prairie-like experience down to the water, because that's, you know, if you're not an eco geek like me, it's sometimes hard to tell the difference between prairie plants and meadow plants, but they'll start to merge together. It becomes more grassy, more floristic, less tree dominant, less shrub dominant. And what happens is that ultimately, it's up here now, but from that tower point, you'll be able to get these great views down and extend the views all the way down to the creek. And this might be a spot where we start to think about some of the bur oak or the swamp white oak that are in that tree grid today might be relocated down here into a spot where, frankly, those species prefer to have their feet wet sometimes anyway. So to be able to move them down here and start to establish the right kinds of species from a forestry standpoint, so that when those walnuts die, and maybe it'll be 20 years from now, then you've got a 40-year-old oak right there. And it's already there, and we haven't lost canopy. We're not starting over when we lose those walnuts. So being, again, really thoughtful about maximizing the assets, the natural features, the ecological features of the site to really turn this park into something really special. It's not a greenfield. We don't have a greenfield. That's a wonderful asset to us, and we're able to turn that asset into just what I think becomes a really different way for your community, for CCPR to do nature experience, nature play in a way you haven't been able to do before. And this is sort of the next phase of kind of the new thing that's going to happen. And I'm really excited about where it goes. Do you want to talk about donations?
Yeah, I think this is actually our last slide too. So we are already starting to think about, again, we are working on a roughly $8 million construction budget on this project. But I do know there is some interest from some folks in the community of maybe donating to the project too. So we've started thinking about what are some elements that might be logical, donor opportunities, highly visible, family oriented, whether it's naming rights, those are details to be figured out later. So the design is starting to sort of generate a lot of those, but sort of the lowest hanging fruit that we found so far, that whole perch area that Ivo talked about, just as a thing, that upper level I think was the one that makes a lot of sense. That lower level seating or that shelter is something that would make a lot of sense as well too. The sports courts themselves could be a logical place that someone might want to sponsor and pay for, we think. And then the bridge crossing, I think that experience, not just the crossing of it, but crossing the thing that Jay just described, that idea of looking down that and that being a real sort of ecological education station. I think that's what you're going to find. It's going to be a magnet for a lot of activities and programs around that little bridge and that crossing. So that could be another place that we thought would be a logical place for a donor. And right now we're in range on the budget. I think right now we're still at schematic design. We're carrying a 25% contingency. I think we're right around, closer to 9 than we are to 8 at the moment. But I think with contingencies and some things that we know about here, we feel pretty good about, we know what your budget is and we're going to hit it. So, but ultimately that's the vision of where we're at with schematic design right now. And I don't know if we are taking questions or if you have thoughts. We have nowhere to go, but I know you've got other business too.
Can board members ask some questions now?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so now would be a time, we're going to take a break in a little bit so Greg and his buddies can depart and not be stuck with us for the rest of the evening, but let's go ahead and ask some questions now. So who would like to start? Mark?
Greg, on the south end, even though that's future, does that lend itself to a structure that could be used for like a nature center or training area to take people in to the nature of the park more?
We were just talking about that on our walk this afternoon. I think there could be a pretty low impact, whether it's a temporary, even a tent or something, or a temporary shelter. Especially if we go modular on some of the shelters, I think you could do something over there potentially. If there was a programmatic need, you think of it as a trailhead. I think there could be some places, whether it's, I mean, right now the garage, the barn is playing that role a little bit, but even kind of where the old house was. Is kind of, I mean, we're going to do development over there, right? That's where Chutes and Ladders is going to be. There's going to be a shelter. There's going to be toilets. And so do you get a running start and do what we're going to do as a final thing maybe? Or is there something, tactical? I think absolutely that could be possible if the programmatic needs out there make sense.
And how about wildlife in this general area? Mostly it's birds.
Deer, yeah.
I don't think we're gonna find any rare well, we have not had any requests come back indicating that there's evidence of that way. You could always have something unique show pass through, but the predominance of species that you're gonna see are not because of the site, but because of the rest of everything around the site is so suburban. It's gonna be predominantly suburban wildlife. The thing that you might get, so I'll say this, but don't hold my feet to the fire. It's gonna happen. Because you've got the Bear Creek corridor connecting up to the Eagle River corridor, it wouldn't be a surprise if someday a bobcat came through. That's the kind of corridor a bobcat would run on. But that's probably about the most interesting wildlife you probably ever see. Other than aviary wildlife. You could see some great horned owls or eagles or some really interesting hawks, but probably not. You're never gonna see it.
Greg, you want to pass the mic?
Oh.
Yeah, so we can capture.
I was further north of this site with some friends the other evening where we were out looking for screech owls and found a number of them. And it wasn't more than a mile north of this
Yeah, I
location,
wouldn't
so-
be surprised if you wanted, well, it's not that hard to do in a suburban area, but you could call in owls. And that wouldn't probably be that hard. If they're in the region, it's really not that hard to call in owls. So I wouldn't be surprised if you had, I mean, great horned owls, as an example, are not, they're looking for house cats too. So they're probably out there at night, and I think they're probably around.
Okay.
You can keep it.
Any other questions or comments? I'm excited about this because I think this is the only piece of property we have that actually has natural topography, right? Except on the river a little bit. Everything else has been a flat field that we've had.
We've largely had to work with flat fields and typically not the natural resources or the oak area, which isn't completely natural but certainly natural-esque. It provides a unique opportunity that we just don't see in our parks.
For those of you, especially the new board members that maybe haven't been out there, if you go start at the entrance on Shelburne, which is back where the old garage is, and then head in, and when this thing opens and goes down the bluff, I mean, it's really cool. So the Chutes and Ladders eventually is going to be really cool.
And the Indiana Bluff it's cool.
For
It's our topography. And again, roughly, just topographically, it's probably 16 footish, but then when you throw the walnuts on top of that, we also, the tower, we didn't really talk entirely about, but, the creek is 20, 25 feet below that point where we have the tower, right? And so it really is a 40-foot tower in a lot of ways, from the creek, right? That was some of our thinking was you didn't have to be 40 feet above the oaks. You're going to get that vista up there but coming out of, so I think, again, the more we've worked on this and the more we've sort of been out there, we keep erasing things out of this plant. I think it's a very surgical, what Jay described is almost sort of like a net zero approach to oaks. Ideally, yeah, some are going to die and need to be, but if we can find a place for them to go or beneficial reuse, I think we shouldn't have to be importing trees here unless there's something we really want to do but I don't know, I don't know that we're gonna be trying to attract this. So many other parks we've talked about, we're trying to reintroduce nature or a habitat or wildlife. In this case, it's about management, and it's about, again, doing less here too. And so, I think each layer of trace over this plan, I think we're all erasing a trail, a little smaller, and just starting to make sure that this thing, it's not about our handprints on this, right? The site already has that. So we want you to be able to go out there and, have the nature of the site speak for itself too. So, we've definitely dialed this in, but I think it may even simplify further as we get into design development in some cases.
Are there more trees on a grid other than just the oaks? I mean, when I see this, it looks like there's more trees that are straight line.
There are, in that north area, it's 90% oaks, but it's of about I can't remember if it's 4 or 5 different oak species, but, and then there is definitely some volunteer species that have come in there. So there are spots where you have oaks 10 feet on center and then a pear 2.5 feet from an oak or something like that.
Well, tulip tree,
An invasive pear that's popped up in between there. So you do have other trees in there. I'm
understand
pretty
that.
sure it was a clear field at one point and someone planted it with oaks.
So it was all oaks that were planted. There were no other species that were,
No.
Doesn't look
10
like
foot
it,
center.
yeah.
No, but as you run the creek corridor down, the north stem down. So if you're going from the left side of the page down to where it says Creek Crossing and then run across, then there you have a whole bunch of native. I mean, the oak species are native species, but you have a whole bunch of creek corridor species. So that's where you have the ash and you have the walnut and you have some hackberry in there, and then you have a bunch of some invasive species in there, predominantly buckthorn and tartarian and other honeysuckle in there.
would those possibly have been part of a mitigation, or do you think it was just to create
I
trees?
think it was someone who either had an idea to start a tree farm or it was part of CRP land, maybe.
Yeah, my understanding, recollection is that the previous owner enrolled this property in a program through DNR, which allowed them to have a significant tax savings on the property, which is part of the reason that a lot of developers weren't interested in it, because there were tax ramifications for removing the trees. But in our case, from a Parks and Recreation standpoint, and especially as we look to maintain the trees just differently, it makes it more viable for a park setting.
Yeah, I mean, in the Midwest, from a tree standpoint, your highest habitat value trees are oaks. The curriculum's written for CCPR. Doug Tallamy wrote the book already about how important oaks are from a habitat standpoint. So probably DNR was strongly recommending oaks as the species to plant because they have the highest. They attract and support the largest number of species than any other species of tree in the Midwest.
Michael, you just want to give a brief definition again of that kind of land for the new board members? Because there are sections around, like out at the corner of, let's see, would be Town Road and 106th Street, sort of the woods that's there. If you all know where the llama farm, and now there's cattle in there a little bit. That woods back there, I think, is one of those.
Yeah, there's some programs, and I don't know what's specifically available today, but there were some programs that basically, if you preserve trees, or in this case, planted trees, you were able to lower your assessed value on the property. So obviously, if your assessed value is lower, then your tax bill is lower. And my understanding, I haven't seen any specific documentation, but some of these programs, if you remove the trees in the future, if you're a taxpayer, where we're, as a governmental entity, we are not taxpayers, so we don't have a tax bill on the property. But there are penalties if you take a property as a taxpayer out of the program. So the incentive is to preserve the species that are put in to provide that habitat. So for us, it worked really well because that habitat was put in to create certainly a much better, I don't want to say blank slate, because we have much more than a blank slate. We don't have that green field as the Smith Group Smith Group team has talked about. We really are starting with something that was very special.
Well, we keep trying to learn more about what's out there too. So we did, we did have a survey done for the phase 1 area, which is kind of growing a little bit. So we are actually getting some additional survey done. The first round, we did trees over 6 inches. We're finding that a lot of the trees in the grid are, some cases are 3 to 6 inches. So we're picking those up. We have species. So we're trying to, at least through that data, identify, again, some zones. We've already done some, things that are drawn here are, based on the data we have, are places that we anecdotally know there are openings, might be invasives, from just what we're seeing out there. But each time, like, we're trying to get additional survey information with those smaller trees for the whole park. And then again, every time we're out here, we're still going to continue mapping it. And we would anticipate, Mark, we were talking before the meeting, as we start laying these trails and things out, we're going to keep doing that. I mean, we learned so much in Central Park. We had a really good trail system mapped out that we crawled under all sorts of things doing that. And then once it got winter, we said, well, it'd be better over there, right? And I think that's what we're going to encourage as this thing goes into construction, that same level, the ecologist view, literally tagging trees, GPSing them, flagging them, whether it's the walnuts and corridors like that too. That's how this park should be built. It kind of picks up the legacy that you've already done with the Moan trails out there. They're really well knit in, and I think the future ones, we're following a lot of those trails already too, but it'll be a very sort of, very informed process versus just like building exactly what's on a set of drawings.
Yeah, just for reference, every tree you're seeing basically from Voyager to where the word tower is an actual tree that's on site. That's not a graphic. Those are real. Those are where the trees are really located on site.
One of the things I like about this particular plan too, and we had quite an extensive conversation regarding the tower. I mean, obviously the over design, I kind of joke, it's almost a Pacific Northwest design, but it's a Carmel Northwest because we're in Northwest Carmel. But for the tower itself, we did some modeling looking at more literal towers, because that's kind of what was sort of illustrated in the master plan. Of course, the master plan is conceptual, but the idea of having height. And we looked at different heights and what's the view sheds that you get. And one of the things we quickly determined is the view that we're trying to provide is of the park, of the nature, of the prairie, the valley, looking towards the creek. Our goal is not to see the towers downtown. So, by doing that, you start shrinking the tower. We want it to be the icon, one of the icons of the park, but maybe not the literal tall icon that was sort of hinted about a little bit in the master plan, but I think ever a bit more powerful than what was kind of that fire tower type idea that was the imagery of Brown County State Park. So I'm super excited about that, and the idea that you can go up and down and use it and have experiences above and below it. I think it's really powerful, and it's going to be something that's unlike any of our parks, but I also think very much unlike any park that you see within the metropolitan area, or beyond, quite frankly. So I'm super excited about this one. As we get further along, I think Bear Creek was always going to be a special park, but this is going to be an iconic park.
And having the extra time to get it all and to see it through the seasons has obviously really helped you as the design
Absolutely.
team. So that was all time well spent.
One thing, just so we are hoping to sort of come back with design development at your November meeting. It's kind of just conceptually kind of our time frame right now. We were originally on this trip going to try to meet with the kids and some other things, and it just wasn't going to work. It wasn't really the best time, but we have a workshop coming up with landscape structures to really get in. You notice we didn't have a lot of playground images. We're going to get into that in detail with landscape structures in the next couple of weeks. And then once we have the design a little bit further along, we're going to come back in October with the community, with the kids again. So we already asked the kids what they want. Now we're going to show them where we're at. And that's been a really good model for us. So expect to see us again in October, and then hopefully we'll be here with our design development presentation in November is our next things that you're going to put on your calendars.
One of the fun things too, in talking with the kids, every time we've done it for every park, for West Park is when we spent a significant amount of time with the kids. But for this particular one, you know, we wanted to talk a little bit about nature play and what do the kids want and what type of experiences would they like to see. And they like the concept of being around nature, but they want it to look like a playground. They don't want, you know, a whole bunch of rocks and just, I mean, they want it to feel like a playground. So, you know, that's where you sort of see that theme coming in with it, where it's nestled into the oak rooms, but not literally, you know, quite. It still is going to feel like a playground. So that's intentional and based on the feedback from our end users, the kids. The other thing that's cool by working with Landscape Structures, as some of you will recall, Landscape Structures has done a lot of our playgrounds. The playground at Westermeyer Commons, Cary Grove Park, Founders Park, Meadowlark Park are all LSI structures. And we like how they work with us and come up with creative designs that have made our playground something truly spectacular. And we've also had the conversation. They very much know that this is the anchor for the future Chutes and Ladders. So we want there to be some connectivity and, you know, use this first playground to be very cool, but also to start hinting towards what's going to come and for those two playgrounds to play off of each other. So we're excited about working with them and with Smith Group to sort of hone in on what those could potentially look like.
We want the Bear Creek series from Landscape
Exactly.
Structures. That's all we ask. Yeah.
Okay, if there are no further questions for the design team, well, thank you very much for being here and sharing all your great ideas. We're all excited too, and we're looking forward to the next iteration.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And we're going to just recess here for a few minutes. The guys can pack up, and then we'll be back on our business items.
We can go ahead and get going though.
We're going to reconvene here at 7:18, and we'll start the business portion of our meeting. So next item is staff reports.
Thank you, Madam President. Staff reports are included in your park board packets. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I did want to note that after last month's budget hearing with the park board, we did submit our budget to the city of Carmel and to their accounting software, Penimation. So far, so good. Everything looks pretty good. They did make one change. They did remove the Central Park Drive East from our 103 Park Capital Fund, 1101 cash account request in the amount of $1,120,000. Again, one of the nice things about the budget process or the format that they utilize is that we're able to prioritize the different projects and help guide them to the things that, you know, we can cut out or move back a couple of years. And that was one of the low-hanging fruit items. And so ultimately, they're trying to make their budget work. They decided that that wasn't something that they could fund through the budget process. Now, I will say with a high level of confidence that there seems to be an interest in funding the project in some capacity. It just won't be through the 2026 budget. So I thought I'd at least mention that. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I don't want to steal Michael's thunder with regards to the budget hearings and stuff that will be next week. He's going to take us to the finish line. I know he's going to talk about that a little bit later, but again, happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay, any comments on the staff reports, Jonathan?
Just one comment. Curtis wanted to congratulate Neil and Cody on passing CPRP. That's awesome. So
Yeah, we've had next month. I'm going to bring a list of newly certified park and recreation professionals that we've had come online here in the last month or two. Eric here, I got to give him some props. He led an in-house CPRP training program. We've done that as a department. We've had a couple of renditions of it. He led this last one, and the success rate has been outstanding. So hats off to him, and I'll make sure that we get recognition for all those individuals at the October meeting.
yeah, awesome.
Thank you. I just had one comment. I see we have food bandits messing up some places in the report. Is that a common thing, or is that just something?
It's just one of those random things. We, over the last couple of years, every now and then we'll have some kids that decide that it's funny to throw food on playground equipment or leave a shelter a mess or whatnot. So we had a couple, I think in August, that left a pretty messy playground that we reported to the police department. But they knew what they were doing. They made sure to cover their faces. They knew where the cameras were and the whole 9 yards. So.
Thank you. Next item is committee reports, Finance Committee. Mark?
We did not have a meeting.
Correct. Minutes are next. Secretary, Madam Secretary.
I move to approve the minutes of the park board meeting on August 12th, 2025.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions or corrections to the minutes? All in favor of approving as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Next item are the financial reports. Treasurer,
I move to acknowledge receipt of the consolidated financial report for July 2025 and acknowledge receipt of the P&L statements for August 2025.
is there a second?
Second.
Katie, thank you. Any questions regarding the consolidated financial report? Then I'll call for the question. All those approving the consolidated financial report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next item is claims.
I move to approve the claim sheet dated September 9th, 2025, and to approve payroll wages and liabilities for payroll dates August 8th, 2025, and August 22nd, 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carried. Next item is monetary gifts. Eric?
Thank you. We had 3 contributions last month. totaling $840. So we had a grant from the Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation for $240 for staff development. So this was some of our Parks and Natural Resources staff went to take a class that then was sponsored by Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation. So they actually then gave us a grant to cover their registration costs. And then donation of $100 from our anonymous donor for staff appreciation, and our continued sponsorship from Scent Hound for our Monon dog pot stations.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the gifts, grants, partnerships, and sponsorships. Katie?
I move.
Okay. Is there a second?
To accept.
Second.
Ready?
Second.
Any, thank you. Any questions further? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We're on to new business now. Curtis, is that?
Thank you, Madam President. Last month, the Park Board approved a contract with United Construction in the amount of $497,303 for demolition and installation of a renovated boardwalk within Central Park. As I noted at the last meeting, I would be approaching the Park Board to direct purchase the Whitcraft Boardwalk for that project. Just direct purchasing provides the department with a pretty substantial savings rather than going through a contractor or including in a bid. So just as a reminder to the Park Board, the boardwalk in Central Park, which is a very beloved feature, amenity, it's beginning to deteriorate to the point where we need to basically replace the entire thing. The helical piers are structurally sound, but the beam, joist, and decking system are significantly degraded, which makes repairs extremely difficult. And I showed these photos in the last Park Board meeting, but attachment A within your packets does provide some additional context into the issues that we repeatedly face. Our department worked with Crossroad Engineers to design a replacement that reuses the existing helical piers while incorporating a modular system, which is the Whitcraft Modular Boardwalk. This system, again, features galvanized structural steel that is hot dipped and has a 100-year frame guarantee. We are planning to maintain the familiar look of the yellow pine deck boards, which you can see in attachment B. The first photo in attachment B is of the boardwalk at River Heritage Park. The other two photos in attachment B are representative examples, stock photos from the Whitcraft website. Again, we already have the Whitcraft system at River Heritage West Park and Meadowlark Park. The Whitcraft proposal is $597,494.34. And under Indiana Code and the Park Board purchasing policy, this does qualify as a sole source purchase since Whitcraft is the only provider of the system. We also utilize Indiana Code to note the compatibility of the proposed boardwalk with the existing Whitcraft systems that we have in our other parks. And legal counsel did prepare a resolution authorizing the acquisition, and that is including your packets as attachment C. If approved this evening, manufacturing can begin with installation scheduled for spring of 2026. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Go ahead, Mark.
Curtis, on this second photo you're showing, which is the Whitcraft, it's on their website, was that available when we did River Heritage, that style?
The stock photo of the
Yeah.
yellow pine? Yes, it is. It is a product that they have readily available. Well, it's not readily available. They have to manufacture it, but that is something that they have.
I really like that.
It's nice.
I like that. That would fit in our park, some of our parks much better than the gray.
Yeah.
At any point in time in the next 100 years, the gray goes bad. So,
I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunities.
thank you.
Thank you.
Curtis, is this the same product that was used in over at West Park?
It is along the perimeter,
Yep.
perimeter path. Absolutely, yeah. That was actually planned to be the concrete originally, but we need to save on cost, so we went with the Whitcraft system because we had it in Meadowlark and River Heritage already,
Meadowlark
and
was
it's
it.
been a phenomenal product. Easy to maintain. We've had literally zero issues. Knock on wood.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Yeah.
there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion for the purchase of the Wickcraft Boardwalk for Central Park.
Madam President, I move to approve Resolution B 2025-008, authorizing the special purchase of equipment from Whitcraft for the replacement of the boardwalk at Central Park.
Is there a second?
Second.
Katie, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Next item is the pool painting at the water park. Curtis?
Thank you, Madam President. This is really a housekeeping item. I'm asking the Park Board to consider a proposal from American Clean and Seal to provide pool painting services at the water park over a 3-year period. Approving this proposal secures 2025 pricing for the services and ensures that we continue proactive preventative maintenance on the pools that are such an important part of our water park. American Clean and Seal has provided the service for approximately 6 years and consistently delivers high-quality results. Our staff really appreciate working with them. They just do a really nice job. Their approach follows a 3-year staggered rotation, which allows us to maintain the pools in excellent condition for the public. So in 2026, we would do the main activity pool. 2027, we do the kiddie pool, catch pool, and dive well. In 2028, they would come back and do the lazy river. As part of the service, the pools are pressure washed to clean the surfaces. They remove all peeling paint. Gutters and joints are caulked, and then they apply 2 coats of immersion-grade epoxy paint with a non-slip additive. Accordingly, I am requesting that the Park Board approve the proposal from American Clean and Seal in the amount of $112,997. In addition, if water infiltration through cracks is discovered, they do provide an additional fee of $75 per lineal foot so that they can utilize a urethane injection. That's why I included a second motion this evening. The timing of this proposal does align well with future capital improvements. If you remember during the budget presentations last month, in 2026, we are planning to fund new filters for the lap activity pool. As part of that project, our staff are also evaluating whether additional drain lines or reconfiguring existing ones may be necessary to improve water turnover and filtration rates. So this actually aligns really well with that, because if we have to do any removal of concrete in the existing pools to reconfigure stuff, American Clean and Seal would then be scheduled to come in and provide a painting of the lab activity pool immediately following that in the spring. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there questions for Curtis? Okay, would someone like to make motion 1 and motion 2? And we can do those together, correct? Thank you.
I can.
Okay, thank you, Katie.
Motion 1, I move that the Park Board accept the proposal from American Clean and Seal and enter into an agreement in the amount of $112,997 for the pool painting at Water Park. Motion 2, I move to authorize the director or assistant director to execute change orders up to their purchasing authority for additional services required and not included in the base proposal price.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Reddy. Any further discussion or questions for Curtis? If not, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the 2 resolutions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Next item is the Easy Dock Boardwalk for Founders. Curtis?
Actually, I'll go ahead and take this one. For this particular project, one of the long-term goals of the park system as it pertains to Founders Park has been to more fully engage the pond that's in that park. If you don't know the pond's there, you may not know it's there because it's kind of hidden, and especially as the vegetation has grown up in this park. There is a trail network that goes into the lower areas of the park, but again, there's not a built means to really enjoy the pond that's here. The history of this site is that it's a former mining site. A lot of gravel and aggregate extraction from this particular site. So the pond is a remnant of that extraction, but is something that's kind of cool about the site. So when we were doing the refresh project, which is currently underway in Founders Park, which is the upgrades to the playground, replacement of the safety surfacing out there, as well as improvements to the asphalt out in the park, We also engaged Y Engineers, which led the planning for the refresh project to begin looking at how can we potentially better engage the water. Originally, we were kind of thinking that it might be something more like a pier or dock that extends into the pond from one of the trails. But as we had more conversation with Y Engineering, we realized that there's actually an opportunity to create a floating boardwalk through this pond that actually interconnects with the trail network that more fully integrates the trails and the ponds together. So not included in the packet, but on the screen there, you can kind of see this is the boardwalk system that we are recommending that will actually go into the pond and then connect into the existing trails that are here on the outside of the pond. It really more fully integrates this. It expands the trail network. It becomes a activator for an area of the park that the trails are used, but not as used as much as I'd like to see them used. So I think this makes it a destination within the park as opposed to sort of an afterthought as what it is now. We went with a floating boardwalk system, and this gives sort of an illustration, a 3D illustration of what the floating boardwalk looks like, and the railing system in the lower right corner, specifically what we would be using. The mountain in the background is not included, unfortunately. But again, it becomes a signature piece within the park. We want to make sure that the railing system is one that is the cable railings because, one, it allows you to more fully see the water, but also by having the cable railing, it's tighter. You can't, if you're a small kid, easily get through it. And that to me is important as we bring people more out into the water. So it's a safety feature as well as a visual feature for this particular thing. But we went with the floating system because this pond also serves as part of the stormwater management for not only the park, but for this portion of the community. And you'll see the water vary quite significantly within it. So this allows you to always stay in close proximity. When we were originally exploring this, whether it was going to be a dock or pier, we were afraid that at certain times of the year you could be skying up above the water, which wouldn't be quite as visually appealing. This keeps it closer to the water, but with it floating up and down, there'll be planks at the end of it so that we're, except in the most extreme situations, be able to keep ADA grade so it's a fully accessible amenity for the public to enjoy. So we think this provides the best of all worlds for the particular project. Similar to the boardwalk for Central Park, we are using special purchasing provisions. In this particular case, we're able to get a significant discount as a governmental entity. So working with legal counsel, we've crafted the appropriate resolution to document the use of special purchasing provisions and authorize the purchase of this boardwalk. The purchase price is $777,124.34. We'll be using the Non-Reverting Parks Capital Fund cash account 1103. These are the proceeds of the local income tax dollars that we received from Clay Township. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions the board may have regarding this project.
Mark?
I got two questions, Michael. This bottom picture, where it looks like they have the gray at the bottom and the wood on the side, is it not hopefully going to be that way?
Unfortunately, because of the way the floating system works, the surfacing that's floating is literally the composite. So as much as we would like to have a little bit richer look for the base, this was the only way that we could make this work.
Okay. I was afraid of that, but that's life.
That's why we upgraded the railings to compensate for
Exactly.
the base.
Yeah, I know we talked about the railing, but I didn't realize the color. The other thing can you go back to the picture you had that actually showed where it's going to be? It looks like, and Crochelle did this?
Yes.
Okay. What we've done successfully is go around the sort of island areas that poke out every now and then.
Correct.
Which is great. But we're also to the west end of it, where it's flat right about in there, just a little bit further down to the bottom and to the left,
Uh-huh.
other direction. That's about where the spring is. So that area won't freeze. So
Correct.
what happens when the rest of this is frozen and that part of the dock is still floating?
So it will continue to float. Fortunately, we have not seen as much freeze activity in this particular pond as we have historically, just because it hasn't gotten as cold during the winter. So there might be certain times where either because of accessibility that we close it off, or if we feel because of winter conditions that it's just not appropriate, we can always close it off.
And I was assuming that the dock system just stayed in your
The dock's, it's a stationary system, and it's
So
designed
occasionally,
for.
we could get a situation where some of it is high enough and then maintenance staff would close it.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Then we're ready for someone to make the motion, please.
Go ahead.
Is it Resolution B 2025-009? Okay. I move to approve Resolution B 2025-009, authorizing the special purchase of equipment from Easy Dock for the purchase and installation of a boardwalk at Founders Park.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any other questions or comments? Then we'll vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. So we're done with all of our,
We're done with the
Official
new
business.
business, and we have no old business to bring before the board tonight.
okay, attorney's report.
Yes, a few things we've been working on. We finalized an agreement with Ball State. We responded to discovery requests directed towards the Parks Department. We worked through some design construction documents with staff. We prepared the resolutions that you just approved, and we are working on finalizing some agreements with the corner site and Kite, and we still have some work to do on that. Happy to answer any questions.
That's still taking some time. It looks lovely, though. I've got to say, the whole thing turned out beautifully, but
Basically, we've been waiting for the as-builts to finalize the agreements that have already been approved. So it really is housekeeping.
okay. Good to hear that. Thank you, Zach. Director's report. Michael?
Yes, I will be emailing you my written report due to an exuberance of meetings yesterday and picking up a puppy today. I did not finish that, but we do have a number of meetings that I do want to bring to your attention. On Thursday, September 11th, I'll be attending a interim study committee on agricultural and natural resources that the General Assembly established with House Enrolled Act 1616. That's Thursday at 1 p.m. at the Capitol building. Basically, the General Assembly in the act that established the budget for DNR also created this study this interim study committee that is focused or tasked with studying the economic impacts of public recreation spaces. One thing that is great is the state is recognizing in the establishment of this that there is economic impact of parks and public spaces. So that's a positive. And also concurrently and independent of this, the Indiana Park and Recreation Association, actually dating before 2020, and it was taken a little bit longer to complete, but we've been, we meaning I'm on the board of directors, so that's why I'm saying we there, as is Jonathan Blake, but we have been doing a economic impact study, actually more than economics, impact study of local parks, so municipal parks, county parks, to see the impact that we're making on the state. What we found in our research is that while there are studies that are more nationally focused or in other states. There's not a lot of data that is Indiana specific. So IPRA engaged the Polis Center at IU Indianapolis to actually do a study. And what we discovered from that, and most of the research work was done in 2024, and the report was just completed within the last couple months. But we were able to identify a lot of information, like, for example, 4% of Indiana's land mass is parks. It could be local, it could be state, it could be federal properties. Actually, we know that's a little bit underreported, but it is around 4%. And we also know that, if you visit a park at least weekly, compared to once or twice a year, you're going to have, and this is based on surveys we did with Hoosiers, you're 1.6 times more likely to report improved physical health, and nearly 2 times likely to report improved mental health. A full 91% of Hoosiers in our survey identified an improvement of their mental health when visiting a park. So we were able to find some of that information. We were able to identify that local parks, so city, town, township, county parks contributed $540 million annually to the Indiana economy and generated directly 9,400 jobs. And again, I think those are all conservative numbers. Polis is well known for being conservative as opposed to, they'd rather be able to substantiate the numbers knowing that they're probably even a little bit higher than reported. And we also know that outdoor recreation, so much broader than just local parks, contributed in 2023 $5.4 billion to the Indiana economy, which represented 13% of the state's GDP. Actually, I take that back. Not that much of the GDP, but represented outdoor recreation was, in Indiana, was the 13th highest, ranked 13 in the nation as far as the contributions to the state's GDP, which is pretty significant and something that you wouldn't necessarily expect in Indiana. You might in Colorado or California, Florida, but here in Indiana, outdoor recreation plays a very important role in our state. So I actually had a meeting yesterday, with Senator Leising, who is chairing this committee. I was able to, based on that conversation, be added to the list of people that are testifying at Thursday's meeting. So we'll be able to share some of the findings from IPRA. And I'm also going to share the fact that, we know from a Carmel perspective that annually, last year, we had 5.7 million visits to our parks. And to put that into perspective, that would make us the second most visited national park if we were a national park, ahead of Zion and Grand Canyon National Parks, which had 5 million visits. So that's not necessarily unique individuals. That's, some person could come 20 times in a year, and that would be 20 visits. But that's apples to apples, comparing it to the national park statistics. So, that's just Carmel. And if you multiply that throughout the state, our local parks have an outsized impact on the recreational opportunities in the state. So we want to make sure that they're aware of that. I have a whopping 3 minutes to be able to present, so I'm not going to be able to give a whole bunch of stats and go into a lot of depth, but we want to make sure that hopefully this is one of several series of hearings that the committee will be having so that we can begin introducing some of the findings, and then also hopefully advocating for dedicated funding for local parks. So excited about that. Also, more locally, on Tuesday, September 16th, we will have the City Council budget workshop that relates to Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation. The budget workshop, which includes a number of budgets, is scheduled between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. at City Hall Council Chambers. We are slated to go on at 10 a.m. I'm planning at being there at 9 o'clock because you just never know how fast or how slow it might be, and you certainly want to be there when you're called. We'll be making that presentation. It's basically the budget that was already presented to the park board, less the 1.12 million, as Curtis commented about in staff reports. There will be some additional meetings related to the budget and city council on Tuesday, September 23rd. There will be a special council meeting at 9 a.m. There are 2 days of workshops, Monday and Tuesday of next week. Again, we're on Tuesday, but a lot of times the council will have some feedback on the different budgets. Mayor Finkel's administration will use the 23rd meeting to acknowledge that feedback that the council provided, as well as any potential adjustments they're making based on the feedback. I do not anticipate our budget being a topic of concern or adjustments, but nonetheless, I'll be there on the 23rd. You're welcome to join me. October 6th, which is Monday at 6 p.m., will be the first reading of the budget ordinance and public hearing. The budgets are sort of talked about informally up to that point, but under state statute, the council has to have a budget ordinance. There's always a first reading and a public hearing so that the public can also provide feedback on the budget in totality, not just our budgets, but the city's budget as a whole. And then on October 20th, also at 6 p.m. at the regular city council meeting, will be the second reading of the budget, anticipated adoption of the budget. So a number of budget-related meetings that will be transpiring. Jumping from the budget, also on Monday, October 20th, tentatively at 3 p.m., both the date and the time, we're looking at the dedication of the White River Bridge. More information will be coming out once we firm up those dates. We're waiting from Fishers to make sure that our funding partners over there are able to join, but that's a date that works for us, for Clay Township, and for Delaware Township, as well as for the county, a representation from the county. So more to be coming with regard to that. I think I mentioned at the last park board meeting, or maybe I've just talked at enough meetings that I haven't mentioned to the park board, but we've been working closely with the Native American tribes that have a history in the state of Indiana, specifically with the Delaware, which are also known as the Lenape, with the Miami, with the Shawnee, as well as the Peoria. And based on discussions we've had with them, we invited them to help us name the bridge. And originally we were looking at maybe we could use a Native American term for the bridge, but working with 4 different tribes, they wanted to make sure that the naming was in a shared language, which they said English would be appropriate because each of the tribes have their own written language and vocabulary, and they didn't want to favor one tribe over another. The shared name for the White River is the White River, and that's not a very exciting name. So they then asked for a list of native species that you might see when you're at the bridge site. And so we provided a list of trees and plants that you might see. And what their thought was, maybe they could come up with a name or use that as an inspiration for some type of plant life that you would have been able to see pre-European settlement to today. And what they rallied around was there's at the approach to the bridge, 2 large bur oaks, as well as some smaller bur oaks in the area. And they rallied around bur oak. So the bridge is going to be named the Bur Oak Bridge. So we're very excited about that. There will be a educational signage, not on the day that we dedicate the bridge, but some date thereafter, that celebrates and tells the story of how we arrived at the name. It will also include in each of the 4 tribes' language how they would spell Burr Oak. So we'll be sharing that. And then down the road, ultimately, when the trail that connects to the bridge and the future south extension of the White River Greenway, that bisection of those 2 trails will be just a little bit west of the bridge. We'll have sort of a small plaza that has a educational sign that's dedicated to each of the 4 tribes. So they'll be able to provide a story, and we'll work with them as to what type of information they'd like on their respective signs. But that'll be coming down the road. Related also to that trail that leads up to the bridge, I believe I've mentioned this at previous meetings. I know I have. We are working closely with the city of Fishers and the town of Zionsville to co-brand that trail because basically the bridge is at the 106th Street alignment. And within Carmel and Zionsville all the way to Zionsville Road, and in Fishers past I-69 and ultimately connection to Geist Reservoir, there's a perimeter pathway, a trail along 106th Street. So the 3 communities are going to co-brand that, as well as the connection points through Hazel Landing Park on the Carmel side of the river and Heritage Park on the Fisher side of the river. We're going to be co-branding that as the 106 Trail. We're leaning into the fact that it's along 106th Street, so we don't want to come up with a name that conjures up something that's more than what it is, because in many places it's kind of a glorified sidewalk. It's a little bit wider that welcomes all users. But there are some scenic sections of it through the respective communities. We'll have a shared logo that our graphic designer is creating that will be used in each of the communities. So you will start hearing me talking more and more about the 106. We actually used, there's a 606 trail in Chicago that is actually a rail trail, so a little bit more sexy, but the 606 comes from the first 3 numbers of the zip code that goes through the respective communities. But here our shared thing is it's all along 106th Street, so the 106. Also have had some meetings with Hamilton County Tourism. They used to, pre-COVID, publish a map that had a lot of the trails throughout Hamilton County. That kind of went out of print post-COVID. They've received a lot of requests from visitors as well as residents within Hamilton County. So they are bringing back a trail map, and they're kind of branding our trails throughout the county as the Hamco Hubway. Not going to require any special signage, just basically the brochures and their website will reference it as that. Right now, it's not a true loop because there are some sections that aren't built in different areas, but especially if you use the Monon Greenway, the Nickel Plate Trail, the Midland Trace, and the 106, as well as some other trails throughout the county, you almost get to a true loop. And within the next year or so, the loop will be completed. So their brochure and their website that they're creating is basically going to talk about different types of experiences you can have on each of the trails and how they interconnect. So the different communities, park systems have been working with Hamilton County Tourism on that to make sure information is accurate as of the time of the posting. Of course, 2 days later, a new section will open or something, but we're working closely with that. Hamilton County Tourism also has a grant program using some of the proceeds from the innkeeper's tax that they collect. And that grant program is designed to fund projects that help basically create more heads and beds throughout the hotels within Hamilton County. And one of the things they would like to do a application for their own grant effectively is working with the different park systems and the Hamco Hubway is have in each of the communities along one of the trails kind of a shared artwork type thing, and they'll work with some more conventions on what that could be, but the idea is that each of the communities would have maybe not identical artwork, but sort of like an inspiring themes that they help, and we collectively as organizations sort of curate what the common theme is going to be, and then each community selects their own particular artwork, but it would be something that is 100% funded through their grant program if the grant is actually awarded. So preliminary stages, there's nothing that's specific yet, but it is maybe a way to tie our different trails together with a common theme. The idea is that it's something that everyone can take a look at. Very conceptual right now, so much more to be coming, and nothing has been committed on that. Those are kind of some of the bigger projects that are happening right now. I'd be happy to address any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Michael. Questions for the director? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to information items. Plan Commission. Jonathan, anything to report?
Yeah, the two biggest things that we're working on right now at Plan Commission are the US 31 and the home place sub-area plans. We're still reviewing those in committee. No final recommendations or decisions have been made yet. We've gotten quite a bit of feedback. At our first meeting, we received quite a bit of feedback from the home place community. And in subsequent meetings, we've been hearing more from residents along US 31 and particularly along Illinois Street. So those will continue to happen, I think, over the next month or so, and then we'll wrap up and get some recommendations put together.
Thank you. School Board, since John's not here, we'll pass on School Board tonight. Climate Action Advisory Committee. Eric?
No new updates. We have a meeting coming up on the 22nd, and then my quarterly report to City Council, the meeting in October.
So I like the idea you were working with street and utilities for mowed areas and maybe some nature.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's still just kind of ongoing with the Sustainability Committee through the city. So, yeah, just kind of continuing those discussions right now.
Any questions for Eric? Okay, moving along to the Parks Foundation. I will give just a quick little update about, as a foundation rep among several on the board, we made money. So that was a good thing. Ended up with 195 people registered when we thought maybe we'd get 25 or 50 to begin with. So that was really great. August turned out to be a miserable month to be doing it in the end, but that's all right. We made $4,198 in profit and had $5,800 in sponsorship or in-kind donations for the prizes and little giveaways. So Carrie sent out a survey. We didn't get a lot of survey results, but I do think they've recognized that the website was a little tricky to use. I mean, it took me 3 or 4 times to get myself on there, so that was not easy. So we'll redo that. But also wanted to thank Trudy's staff for sending out the emails each week that identified the next park for you to tour. So that was very nice with the maps, and that part worked really, really well. So want to thank them. So we're off to a good start. Looks like this will be back. We'll try it again next year. And
I think we'll
Curtis,
try.
you had some sort of frame of reference for we hope for thousands, but you said actually for a first event it was pretty good.
Put things in perspective. If this was a CCPR program, it would be one of the largest programs that we offer. So I think for the first year of the event, the attendance is outstanding. I'd be elated. I'm elated. I'm sure the foundation is as well.
We're happy. We made money, and the T-shirts were really cool. So good job by Carrie and her team. Okay, now we're on to Park Board comments and discussion. Any questions? I just, watching the meeting, I saw we had a gentleman here about the speed demons on the Monon, so I was glad to, did you make contact with him later or whatever? Okay, but, okay.
Yeah, we have a significant number of new speed limit signs going up and down the Greenway. There was a recommendation of some signage, which we actually have signage, not like on the Hagenberg Trail, on some of the things. Now, the signage that we have on the Monon Greenway isn't necessarily as conducive, at least some of the existing signage, but we will be looking at some opportunities maybe with the speed signs. Of course, I like saying, and you know, sorry to Zach in advance, signs are for attorneys. Usually the signage is something that, you know, the people that behave well usually don't need the signs in the first place.
Right.
And the people that aren't necessarily the best behaviors are behaving the best, don't really care if there's a sign or not. They're not going to follow it. So doesn't mean that you shouldn't have it. Obviously, there's some educational stuff, but I will tell you that never once in my approaching 30 years in Parks and Recreation have I found a sign that changes behavior. So.
Well, hopefully the education is going on with the resource officers and,
That has been happening, and our park resource officers have been spending a good amount of time on the Monon Greenway as well as within our parks. There's been a lot of education happening. There's been some citations, mostly warnings, to help educate people as to appropriate and inappropriate behavior on the Greenway. So that, in my opinion, is where we're going to have the most effect as we, people see that our park resource officers have commented that they've received more positive feedback since they've been assigned to parks and marched than they've had pretty much their entire career. So
well, that's good. That's good. People are glad to see them.
people are glad to see them.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed even some of the kids coming through Central Park have slowed down on the scooters and the unicycle. They were, I mean, it was like they knew everybody's eyeballs was on them. So I thought that was progress. Okay. Any other questions about that? And then I just want to say thank you to, of course, Jen filled in for me last month, and the budget presentations were excellent. I watched those all online. So again, to Jen and Brown and to Michael Norman and Curtis, as always.
Absolutely. The team did a phenomenal
Yeah,
job,
did a really good
in
job.
preparing the budget, and want to give them all the props.
Any other questions? Anything else for the good of the group? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Jonathan, thank you. Do I have to have a second, Zach? I have to have a second, right? Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, Katie, thank you. We are adjourned.